What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to look at an interesting story going around online about Xbox Game Pass. And look, I want to make sure we're coming off the right way right in the beginning. This is not meant to be a console warrior thing. I find it interesting in terms of how these deals get done and what the subscription service has been doing and like where it's going. That's what interests me more than saying, oh, Game Pass ruins everything, or it's like the devil, or PlayStation versus Xbox. You can think that, whatever. I mean, I'm not into the console warrior stuff, but I've always been interested. I want to start off by saying this because I think we'll probably circle back to this topic as the video goes. I'm always curious at how these deals work, whether they be Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or even exclusivity deals. I think we probably talked about it with like PlayStation exclusivity last, where say Square Enix with Final Fantasy, how much does Sony give them? And when people talk about sales and say, oh, the game flopped or the game whatever, does some of Sony's money make it not as bad? Like, what do the executives and what do they know that we don't know? And I've always just been genuinely curious. I've always been curious, like, what do you get when your game is exclusive on Game Pass, right? Because you're maybe not making as much money as you would. So is it supposed to equal out? Does Xbox cut you a check for, say, 10 million because that's what you thought you'd be able to sell? I don't know. I've always wondered, and we've heard some kind of contracts for Game Pass of maybe a game is worth like 10 million, maybe a game is worth 5 million. But what we're talking about today, and this came from Shinobi, but I think originally PC Gamer here, big Xbox Game Pass and Epic exclusive deals have dried up for indie devs, says Mega Crit, Slay the Spire, and Red Hook Studios' Darkest Dungeon. Microsoft's deals have come way down in scope, says one of their co-founder, Casey Yano. The gold rush is over. And if you read the article, I mean, those are the general quotes. They go into it a little bit more in depth, right? And look, the big thing is Game Pass. That's what everybody's kind of talking about, considering Microsoft kind of gets that double whammy where they talk about the deals have dried up, and they also say, Xbox Game Pass specifically, those deals have come way down. And basically, these developers were talking about if they were just getting into it right now, they wouldn't have the opportunities that they had a few years ago because there was actually a lot of money there. So, I mean, again, I find this, you can go console warrior stuff. I guess knock yourself out. But for me, I'm, again, just kind of curious of how all this stuff works. So what I honestly imagine is there was kind of an initiative, and I think maybe even like the streaming services like Disney Plus and whatnot, they might have it as well, right? In fact, we've kind of heard that, right? They wanted all of this programming. They put all this money into it. We know that several of these streaming services like lose money. They're not exactly making it. They kind of like a 10-year plan to make money, but they just want to put content. And then eventually they kind of pull back. And I believe that's also what Disney Plus is doing, right? Where they say, okay, there's just not the need for as much programming. So when it comes to Game Pass, I wonder if it's a situation where, to get it off the ground, look, it's been around for a while now, but let's just say 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, right? They had this maybe like bank, they had this bank of money, and it was specifically just to grow Game Pass, and they didn't care what they were losing. They didn't care what was happening. They were going to go out and they were going to spend that money and throw, millions of dollars of deals to all of these different studios to get their game on Game Pass. And eventually that well dries up. And I do believe, look, I'm sure it's more complicated than that. Okay, I'm not pretending like that is exactly what happens, but I think it's probably close, right? I assume there's this initiative, this push that, hey, if they think that their game is worth, say, $3 million on a contract for Game Pass, we'll give it to them. Or maybe they negotiate or whatever. But maybe the real value is lower. Or maybe Xbox is comfortable giving far less. But they pushed it for quite a while. And again, factually, what you really can't argue against is what these developers are saying. Now, they're on the indie front, right? It's possible that it's not happening for AAA, but I do just wonder in general, like, where do we go from here? I'll tell you this, right? That is scary. And again, the article, I think a big point of the article was, it's not like the fear, but it is about kind of the future of like, it's going to be kind of rough for some of these developers, especially indies, right? If they were expecting these deals from Epic and Game Pass and just the stuff to kind of basically like fund them, fund them going through with their game. Some games that we've heard, even historically, and I guess they tend to be on the smaller side, we've heard developers kind of come out and say, like, without Game Pass, this wouldn't have worked, right? And that is, I guess, where the fear, comes in for them specifically, right? Because if they've been saying that historically and that's gone, a lot of these studios aren't going to be able to do it. Now, I mean, I kind of get it from each side of things, right? Like, eventually Xbox does have to pull back. Is it an issue with subscription? Well, okay, here's the thing, right? I've always said in terms of Game Pass, it truly is the best deal in gaming, right? I know obviously that's like a tagline that like the Xbox fans will always kind of throw out there. It's the best deal in gaming. I actually think PlayStation Plus is also I think it's actually an underratedly good deal, PlayStation Plus, but these subscription services are really good. Are they sustainable? I feel like, can they be? Yes. Are they right now, and can they be in the next little while? I really don't know. I don't know how successful Game Pass, like what I've always talked about, right? You look at like Halo Infinite, and the reported budget for Halo Infinite was like $500 million. It was $500 million for Halo Infinite. And you put that thing behind Game Pass. Now, yeah, it'll sell, but the point is, can you make $500 million back through Game Pass subscriptions? And you get money monthly from people, and you have millions and millions of people, going into it. It's possible the answer is yes, but when you fund that on a massive scale, and all of Xbox's studios are now dependent on it, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the reason why they're putting these games, and will continue to, on PlayStation and on the Switch, right? Like, we've talked about the debate of Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves and stuff, but, you have, let's just take Bethesda and all their games, now Activision. It takes a lot of money to fund Call of Duty games and to fund Activision and Blizzard and Bethesda. If you lock them all behind subscription services, it is the best deal for us. But for them, are they making their money? And the answer is probably no. I think it's more a long-term play, right? They want the ecosystem to grow. They want people to associate their good exclusives with Game Pass so that eventually they do it. And so Game Pass gets so big that eventually it does make them money, right? I mean, again, is it as simple as I'm breaking it down? No, I'm sure it's much more. But the way I kind of read it is this. And I mean, it is a tough topic, but number one, I feel bad for, some of these developers coming up, because I do think it's going to get, not even just with the economy and all this stuff, but I mean, I guess because of the economy and even because of what's going on in these companies right now, it's hard. It's just naturally hard to get these games off the ground. And then, again, the bigger picture of subscription, look, I want Game Pass to work, and I've always wanted Game Pass to work. And I think, is it working? I think in a sense it is. I think generally, even for Microsoft, it probably is. Is it doing as well as I think they want it to? No, I don't think that. Especially because even for PlayStation Plus, we've heard, the gaming ecosystem is slowing, right? Less and less people, the people that are being added to the established gamers are lowering. It's not as high of a number. The people being added to subscription services are lowering. They've kind of maxed out, and they've maxed out in certain places, right? They might have to go like heavier on mobile or heavier here, or heavier there, but in certain places, they've kind of dried up. So it is a little worrying for the future, and specifically for this video and this topic, it is a little worrying for Xbox, because if their entire thing, and it is, their entire thing is Game Pass. And if Game Pass is this like facade, which I don't know if it is, I hope it's not. But if it is, like, their entire model would just completely fall apart. But honestly, keep it around as long as you can, because I think it's a great deal. I think it can be good. I think you just need, at the end of the day, and the most boiled down, you would need enough money coming in consistently every month from the subscription to be able to fund everything that you do with it, which means buying Activision, which means supporting the next Halo Infinite or the next Halo game, the next Gears of War. This subscription money has got to largely go into keeping all of those studios around, because your sales are they are going to be lower. And I know there's always the debate of, like, does Xbox fans, do they buy things? I'm not going to step into that controversy right now, but I will say, statistically, like, if you're going to get something for free, say on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, if they're on it, I do think you're not going to sell as much as you would. Now, is that a problem? Well, if they say it's a problem, right? But ultimately right now, they're not really talking about it as a problem. So you would assume, okay, well, they're fine with it. They're fine with less sales, but people have the game. It's just they're not sold to, like, they're not making the money off of it because they're making it through Game Pass. As long as that holds and the money that's transferring in and out is equal, or I guess it would have to be more coming in than leaving, right? Then the business is fine. So I don't know. It's a complicated subject, I'm sure. I mean, I'm not in the know. I'm not in there. So things I said could have been all over the place and wrong. But it is fascinating. And like I said, I've always just wondered how a lot of this stuff works. So I hope Game Pass succeeds. I hope that there is still a place for, and I mean, Epic as well, right? I mean, we've mainly focused on Xbox, like I said earlier, but if it's the case for all of them, which I mean, they say Epic in the article, then it could be a very big problem for future independent creators that for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years have looked to these services to almost like save them. And that's not maybe the best business practice, right? Relying on that stuff. That's another thing. But I mean, if that's what they've been doing and then all of a sudden now they can't do it, not great, right? The next kind of era of these developers might be in big trouble. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure as always you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.